soldiers in Bangladesh on Tuesday, just before he left, U.S. President Barack Obama honored the men in uniform, specifically the first responders when Typhoon Yolanda hit in November last year. Three of them join us in the studio today. They are Philippine Navy Captain Roy Trinidad, U.S. Air Force Major George Apalizo, Chief of the Philippine Joint Operations Division, and U.S. Army Major Leo Libra, Joint U.S. Military Advisory Ground Operations Officer assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Manila. Gentlemen, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, I want to go back to that day when the U.S. President had commended. Of course, there's so many people to thank, but let's go back. Three of you were mentioned. Let's listen to this.
Laborers, in the days that followed, they worked together, Filipinos and Americans, setting up a medical floating aid from American cargo aircraft. And what started with a few men on that first day became a global relief effort that saved countless lives. Roy, the Philippine Navy SEAL, George, Mike, Leo, they are here today. George also happens to be a proud Filipino-American. I want them to stand again and accept our thanks. We are proud of their outstanding service.
All right, that is a video that I continuously remember in my head, and much more you guys. I mean, if I was kind of affected by that commendation by the U.S. President. How did it feel for you guys? I mean, you obviously knew you would be somehow called by the U.S. President and recognized.
We were told to be prepared if ever he would mention us. There was no nothing specific. We just had to play it by ear. And if he would like us to rise to recognize them, just go with it.
But you knew that if you were to be recognized, it was because of your efforts during Typhoon Yolanda.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't do anything else big to be recognized by him.
Oh, really? So you knew? I mean, that would have really been just the topic there, Major George, who's of course I mean, are you half Filipino or?
No, ma'am. I'm 100% Filipino.
100% Filipino, but you work for the U.S. Air Force.
Yes, ma'am. I'm in the U.S. Air Force.
Wow. You also, how did it feel being, recognized by the U.S. President?
Yes, it was a great honor, really exciting. But at the same time, it was sort of uneasy because I knew it wasn't just me. It wasn't just us three, us four. There were 2,000 other U.S. servicemen that helped with the relief efforts.
Yes.
So if that meant I was representing the 2,000 others, it felt good.
Major Leo, you of course, you were an American. Was this the first time you saw your president?
It was the first time I've seen him in person. Many times on television and speeches, but the first time actually meeting him in the same room. And just to echo George's comments, it was a great honor. But I kind of felt like we were at the tip of the iceberg, and there were so many other people supporting us, below us, helping, make the whole operation a success.
Yeah, that's why I was saying in the beginning that, you symbolize the four of you, actually symbolize the kind of help and assistance that was given to the Philippines during Typhoon Yolanda. But there are many, many other people who were involved in this operation, thousands of others. But, you guys were recognized, that's why you were here, and I'm very pleased to meet them, the three of you. What was it like? Let's go back to, that day, Captain Roy, in Yolanda. The typhoon struck Friday morning, and when exactly did you get to Tacloban? Because that airport was going to be closed, or was closed. There was a lot of clearing operations that needed to be done. Please tell us more about that experience.
When the typhoon struck, people at GHQ, especially J3, the Joint Staff Operation, didn't know what was happening there. Communications were totally cut off. SND and SILG were there, but we had no comms with them. So they decided to send an assessment team, and I volunteered for the team. So the following day, we took the first plane in, together with some senior officers. George was there, Colonel Mike Wiley was there. We arrived, the place was, devastated.
But you were able to, how were you able to land? In my mind, there's a lot of debris, a lot of obstruction on the runway.
The Air Force, yes ma'am, the Air Force guys in Tacloban cleared the airport on the afternoon
Of Friday.
We got word Saturday morning, 10 minutes before we departed, that the airport is good to land.
Okay, so it was you together with Major George and Mr. Wiley. Was it Major Wiley as well?
Colonel Wiley.
Colonel Wiley. The three of you were actually together.
Yes,
Were you together in one plane?
Yes ma'am.
All right, so you were the first. I guess it's safe to say you were the first at the scene.
There were others with us on the plane. OCDP people were there. Ma'am Dinky Suleiman was there. But from the military component, I was the senior guy. And SND made me the ICS commander for the airport.
I see. So you were the point guy there.
Yes ma'am.
Yeah. Major George.
Yeah.
And so you landed. And when you saw the place, what were your first thoughts?
It was kind of hard to describe, but it was just total devastation. The first picture I saw was the terminal. It looked like a bomb exploded inside. I couldn't imagine how a storm could do so much damage.
So it shocked you.
Yes.
Somehow. It's something you've never seen before.
No, I have not seen it. But the one thing that actually stood in my mind was when I was looking around in the airport area, the damage was very bad. I looked towards the tower, the control tower. It was still standing, but off to the left was the Philippine flag, was still standing. It was still flying. And I just thought, wow, that's Philippine resiliency right there. The flag's still up amidst all the rubble.
That characterizes the values, and the Filipinos are the very resilient people. And then, when did you get there, Major Leo?
I arrived Sunday morning. Our flight left very early Saturday night, Sunday morning. So
Coming from?
coming from Manila, from Villamor Air Base, and when I got on the ground, I was told to meet a Captain Roy Trinidad, that he would be my point of contact, and I should help him in any way possible. And as George said, there was a fair degree of confusion and chaos, but things were already starting to get better by Sunday. So in our profession as military officers, we're problem solvers. So getting on the ground, working with George, and under the leadership of Captain Trinidad, we just started solving the small problems, then the bigger ones, and things.
How difficult was it? I mean, for all of you, you were the point person, Navy SEAL, which I admit it's the first time I heard that we have a Navy SEAL. And then, of course, Major Leo, you are Green
United States Army Special Forces Green
Beret, right? And Major George here is part of, just to give them a better...
Yes, I'm an Air Force officer. I'm part of the Joint U.S. Military Assistance Group. I'm actually the same
with Major Leo.
with Major Leo.
Okay, what was the biggest problem? I mean, of course, we know what happened in Tacloban, but in your experience, how difficult was it? What was the hardest part?
Sorting things out, man. Just trying to make sense out of everything. You don't know where to start. You don't know what you have in hand. You don't know the extent of the devastation. So you just have to start someplace and just move on. Just, innovate as you move on.
But what was it? Was it the type that you guys were in a huddle? Were you guys speaking and giving feedback and suggestions on how to actually go about this? Because as you said, Captain Roy, this is something very new. It was not something that was even imagined by anyone. So what was it like as a team?
It was a lot like zone defense. Captain Trinidad had one area and he was solving problems, fixing, getting cargo moved from the airport to the aid distribution point, and then George was in the tower talking with the airplanes, making sure that the aid could come in, and then I'd be down talking to some of the displaced persons, making sure they were manifested, making sure that the most wounded ones were moved to the front. So it was really a very fluid situation, as Captain Trinidad said.
And it ended up being, not a lot of complication, at least among you guys and at that particular airport. Because obviously it seemed you had your very important roles to play during that time. You taking care of those who needed to be brought to the plane, brought back, or maybe planes coming in. You were, of course, taking care of all the planes in and out, which is also very vital that's actually the three of you coming together. It makes up a team. Of course, you need other people with you. But moreover, over and above that, what was the most difficult part? I mean, would you say you were a little bit isolated because you were in the airport and you didn't really get to see, or did anyone really get to see, gentlemen, what happened outside of the airport?
Correct. So I had the first few days, we didn't know the extent of the devastation outside of the airport. What we had at the airport was what we saw. But we knew that there's going to be more relief coming. So our job is to get that airport set up for the relief.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, the most difficult thing was at the end of the day when the last flight leaves, and I have to tell the displaced persons that they can't get on board. They have to wait the next day.
Yeah.
That was very hard because the looks on their faces, they would cry because they just wanted to leave, and that meant
It's like a mad scramble to get out of Tacloban.
yes, and that meant they had to stay at the airport another night with little
But
to no
would
food.
you say you were systematic in the selection? You guys were systematic in the selection? Because I'll give you another example later on, because some of you were in G1 as well, and I had an experience there, but here, what kind of system did you put actually? I'm interested to find out. A system in place, first in the plane to get out of Tacloban.
Yeah, so it was the old women, sick children.
You know, first.
Yes.
And I think an important, one of the most difficult things for me personally, and something I learned from Captain Trinidad, is the importance of treating those evacuees with the utmost dignity and respect. I mean, we were in a mad hurry. We were trying as fast as we could to move supplies, but just seeing Roy's leadership and the way he treated each individual like they were an important person. And even though they had lost everything, they weren't going to lose their dignity. And I think that was...
That's very nice to hear, Captain.
Ma'am, the most difficult part for me was, at night when you go back to the devastated shelter, it would start to rain and somebody would knock, and the mother would say, "Sir, pwede ko bang humingi ng cardboard? Kasi para saan po? Pero we'd gagawin papag po ng mga bata." So, you guys, sit down, bring the children in. But before we knew it, the whole place was full
Wow.
of kids, and there were hundreds of others outside
Waiting. Yeah.
in the rain.
Yeah. Would you even been able to sleep at all? I mean, what were the quarters like for you? How long were you there, Captain Roy?
3 weeks, ma'am.
Tuloy-tuloy?
Yes, ma'am.
Pero palipat-lipat ka?
No, I was in Tacloban most of the time.
A long time.
I was there for a week.
1 week.
Yes.
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks, all right. Okay, so you were the one that stayed there the longest. So it was difficult. Was it difficult the first 3 days? And then the last succeeding days as difficult or more difficult, or was it easier as the days
The
progressed?
most difficult part, ma'am, was the first 4 or 5 days. Sort things out, put a system in place, get everybody to move together in one direction. Then as we started moving that and we gained momentum, it made pushing things forward much easier.
If there was one thing you learned and could have changed with how you handled things during the crisis, the problem in Tacloban because of Typhoon Yolanda, what would you have done?
I would have bought more water and food for me. So I could sustain myself longer.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, after this second day, we were eating relief goods. Because we didn't know the extent of the damage.
Yeah, you weren't prepared for that, huh?
Leo was actually a lifesaver for us because when he came the next day, he brought 2 boxes of MREs. Those meals
Not
ready
the
to
meal
eat.
replace, the meal packs, right? So you guys are good, huh?
So
Do those taste good?
They taste great when you're very hungry.
Not that, huh? All right, so that's the whole Yolanda experience in Tacloban. Some of you guys actually went to P1. Who was there? All three also. And again, let's tell our viewers that there was an airport there opened maybe, I would say 4 or 5 days after Yolanda. It was a very, apparently from how I understand it, was built by the Americans way back in World War II. Strong, sturdy, no problems, so old yet. I hardly saw any bumps in that runway. There was a time I went there and saw all these U.S. helicopters as we landed, just everywhere. It seemed like a U.S. base just to me. than an airport of the Philippines. What was the experience like for you guys over there in G1, Captain?
G1 when we got there was closed, so the job then was to open it up for traffic, air traffic.
Right.
It was critical that we could open this up because the game changer would be the influx of the aircraft of the US. So we could push supplies to the outlying islands and the towns. So G1 was more devastated than Tacloban, but the airport was in good shape, much better shape.
Was it how you saw it? It was more devastated than Tacloban?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah?
Yes, ma'am. In terms of percentage of the town hit compared to Tacloban.
Yeah, because, well, that's the first hit of that's where it actually entered Typhoon Yolanda. What about you, Major George?
So I actually did not land in Gian. My job was to do the aerial survey of the airport and see if our MV-22 Ospreys could land and where we could set up operations. So we just flew around in the airport. Of course, I did a survey and then I reported back to headquarters as far as if the MV-22s can land.
How I understood that, what was that in the airport in D1, you could land your Ospreys?
Yes.
Ospreys, these really high-tech helicopters in D1. And you could actually even, I'm sorry, I forget that island, but it was transporting people from there to another island quite close because that island was likewise devastated by Typhoon Yolanda. So they were actually transporting the residents from that island into D1. That was something I saw. I just forget. Do you remember that island?
I don't remember the island.
All right.
And it was a great effort, as Captain Trinidad said, opening up that airport, because we were able to multiply how much we were able to distribute. And from my recollection, it wasn't just American helicopters. I think the first 3 days it was just Armed Forces of the Philippines helicopters. And without them showing us, hey, this is where we need to go to open up this point, I couldn't have relayed that back to our higher command to bring those helicopters there. So it was really a truly a team effort.
And you guys really set up camp there in B1. I mean, I saw a lot of Americans there. And the only reason I was saying it is it really looked like a U.S. base to me, because that's what I saw. Even the leadership on the ground, and we had our soldiers there, but it was really dominated by Americans. But anyway, that's another story. That was another strategic point to bring and distribute goods, unlike if it was just in Tacloban at that time. So the Yolanda experience, something unforgettable for all gentlemen, for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And then,
Ma'am, there was one story that I thought was particularly touching. I recalled it was the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel on the Filipino side, Lieutenant Colonel Coronel.
Yes, ma'am.
It was his duty to protect that base in Tagordon when the typhoon hit, and him and his men held it down. And even when the water was rising, they punched holes in the roof and climbed out of the top, and they were swept away out into the ocean. And he said he thought he was going to die, and the only thing that saved him is he saw a small child, 7 years old, in a palm tree, and he grabbed him, and they both grabbed onto this piece of wood for 6-7 hours in the middle of the ocean. He said if it wasn't for the need to keep that child alive, that he probably would have perished himself because of the dire circumstances. So I know we were honored by our president and we were called heroes, but I think those survivors that really went through that trauma, they should be the real heroes.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, you represent names and faces to, thousands and thousands, not just of soldiers, not just U.S. and Filipino soldiers, but even ordinary people who have actually helped in their own little way.
Yes, ma'am.
Nameless, faceless people, even those who continue to help up to now, because that's still a problem over there.
All the non-governmental organizations.
NGOs as well.
All the multinational
Correct. Every organization has come to the aid of the Philippines. Is widely should be recognized, but that would probably take forever for the president to do. But anyway, so that's one unforgettable experience, and then comes the president doing this. You got some souvenirs, right?
Yeah, I did not bring my souvenir.
You didn't bring it? I'm not gonna steal it.
Okay, I brought mine, so.
It's a proud tradition.
What
It's
is it
a,
called?
it's a-
Tell us about it.
It's a coin, a commander's coin. In this case, commander-in-chief. That's usually given to persons who did an outstanding job So the commander does not give it to just anyone. So it's for military folks. It's special if you get awarded the commander's coin.
Wow. So all 4 of you got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. And what do you plan to do with it? Can I buy it? Are you sure? This is my last offer. So is this the first time you got it?
A lot of
commander's coin.
Yes, I've had other coins before presented to me by other commanders, but this one is the most special.
Really? I mean, wait a minute. So sorry, you're saying that other presidents?
No, commanders, as in like my colonel or a general.
Yeah, but what about the president?
The president? Oh yes.
They're very rare.
Is it also your first?
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Really?
Yes.
It's also my first. Again,
Daga
of course,
para
obviously,
Pinky.
this is something you're going to keep,
Oh yes.
Forever. You're right. That is the most special. All right. So over and above that, let's talk about the kind of relationship the U.S. servicemen have with Filipino soldiers. Please give us more, stories on what training is like, on what teamwork is amongst you guys.
Ma'am, it's the Philippines and the U.S. has a very long history of working together. This also holds true for both militaries. We welcome them in a sense that if I would like you to basketball game, if you play among ourselves, you're sort of inbreeding, and you sort of...
You lose against America.
No, just
Come on.
Filipinos. If we just play among ourselves, we sort of level off.
Pindi lagi sa Amerika.
You platoon.
Yeah. No, if you play with a better team, that would increase your level
Yeah.
of performance.
Well, you probably think they're better, they're stronger, and they're taller.
Yes, ma'am, but they also learn some stuff from us.
Like what?
How we do things in the local setting.
What do you mean?
Like, let's say for Yolanda, it would be good for us to, stay in the open fields, in our tents.
Yeah.
These guys would be in air-conditioned tents. They bring in generators and everything.
I didn't stay in.
Yeah,
we should say
we stayed in your
That's true, I saw that.
Right.
So, ang Pilipino sanay sa open tent.
Pag nilagay niyo po sa
Cooler lang
air-conditioned
katabi.
tent, yes ma'am, put us in the air-conditioned tent. We get sick after 2 days, 3 days.
And then these guys, they in air-conditioned tents with refrigerators, gensets, etc. Do you guys have TV? Tell me the
We
truth.
have monitors
Monitors, is that what you call TVs?
for computers and our command and control. And dovetailing on Captain Trinidad's statement, we do learn a lot from training with the Armed Forces of the Philippines because when we just train amongst ourselves, we have a set way of doing things. And in combat operations and humanitarian assistance and some things, it's very difficult to have just a strict way to do things. So when we train with our AFP partners, we learn different ways to do things that we had never imagined, and that can apply to outside the Philippines. So it really helps us greatly.
So yes, with Yolanda, with previous training because my counterpart is the Philippine Air Force.
Yeah.
And I do wanna say something about the Philippine Air Force. They were the first responders. The Philippine Air Force helicopters were the first ones delivering food to Guian, to Tanawan, all the outlying areas outside Tacloban. So they really did a super job with the relief, especially the first 2 days. But with me working with the Philippine Air Force in Tacloban, I knew their techniques, tactics, and procedures. I knew that when they land, they have a separate way. We have our separate ways of doing things. One is not necessarily better than the other. It's just different. But I know when they land their C-130s, they shut down their engines. So I know in my mind I had to account for that time on the ground. Because when the U.S. aircraft lands, we do not shut down our engines. So keep the engines. For certain reasons, tactical reasons, operational reasons. And it's quicker, so we don't have to shut down, wait for it, and then start it up again. But that's just the way we do things. It doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean that the Philippine Air Force is better.
Or it doesn't mean
just
that there's
different.
a way, really, right way to do it.
Correct.
There's no right way.
Correct. So I know the Philippine Air Force tactics, so I have to account for that as far as ground time, allowing me more time for their aircraft to stay on the ground. So,
All right, well,
That's a lesson,
congratulations not just to the 3, but again to all those who have been part of this, who helped, etc. But as a last question, let me ask, what happens after this? Where will you be? What are you doing? What is your next assignment?
Life goes on. Like what I said after the meeting the president, If at the end of the day you get recognized for your efforts, well and good, thank you. If not, no hard feelings, life goes on, just do your job.
Right.
So we never expected this. It was just another day in the office. Get down there, do your thing, and get out.
Major George,
So,
are you still going to be in the Philippines? Will you still be here?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here until 2015.
Okay.
So I'm on a 3-year assignment here in the Philippines.
3 years
And
na
where were
tayo.
you before this?
Yung 2
I
years
was in
na.
Los Angeles Air Force Base,
Oh, okay.
working for satellites.
Ah, okay. The stuff I don't like. All right. Major Leo, are you still going to be here?
I'm still going to be here for another 2 years.
Okay.
And in fact, I'll probably have to get back to work right after this interview. So it's a very busy time at Balcatan. And
May nga
It
extend
starts,
sila.
doesn't it start tomorrow? Balikatan?
Next week.
Next week. All right. Where's the Balikatan next week?
well, it's in many places, Fort McSai,
Clark Air Force Base.
Clark Air Force
there's
Base.
one.
So we're, George and I and Captain Trinidad we're planning this, and we're helping the forces and training to prepare for.
So good luck to all three of you, and it was a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you.
Tragedies.